And so a lot of those people have done that. Like they've gone through that part, and that's why they're so successful, is they did get through that. They do have a really solid mindset around money, but what about the rest of their life? What about their legacy before they leave this world? Because once you have attained a certain amount of money, it's like, okay, but what's next?
This is a story about a dude named Lane. And one day he went and tried to rent them out, and then he became one of the man.
Hello, Simple Passive Cashflow listeners. Today we are talking to Mariko Frederick. It's going to be a little bit different today, a little bit more touchy-feely. Not too much of real estate or wealth building today, but Mariko does work with a lot of high-end professionals, Olympic and professional athletes, CEOs of 7- and 8-figure businesses, and she is a transformational speaker and performance coach. And she is founder and CEO of Priority. And I thought we would bring her on and kind of talk about some findings with folks that are, sort of listeners of this podcast and insights. But welcome, Mariko.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on today.
Yeah, so let's kind of get right into it. You and I were kind of talking before, and you work with a vast variety of high-level performing folks. I would say the people that kind of listen to this podcast primarily are working professionals, but man, these guys are high performing folks, making over 100, 200, 300,000 a year, various level of white collar jobs or medical professionals. Yeah, let's talk about some of the findings from, kind of that cohort.
Sure. The things. How can we go deeper into that?
So Mariko, a lot of these people, they come to you. What is the first motivation that they're feeling that kind of triggers them to find somebody like yourself?
Put their finger on exactly what it is.
So Mariko, a lot of people are coming to you for, help getting unstuck. What are some of the motivations that maybe if somebody's listening right now, they're feeling that kind of triggers a lot of your clients to find you in the first place?
Sure. So most of my clients have a feeling inside. They can't put their finger on it, but they just know they're meant for more. They feel like they have another purpose. Most of my clients very well financially, have done big things in their life, still fight that, or they're meant to do. And so I love working with them because that's something I'm able to help them with, is discover exactly what they're meant to do before they leave this world.
Is there some kind of like a trigger? Because I know when people kind of find Simple Passive Cash Flow, or they start to do that dive late into evening on Google, how do I, quit my job? It's usually because of some big event. Is that some of your findings, or is it just a general buildup over time?
I'd say there's two types of people. So one type is they know they're meant for more, and they're really seeking me out to figure out what that is. I do a lot of work by referrals. The other is they have accomplished so much in their life, but they feel unfulfilled. And so on the outside, when you look at their life, they have made, very good money, and they have accomplished things that not a lot of people in the world can say they've done. And yet they still feel like, quote, empty inside, or they'll come to me and say, I kind of feel dead inside. And that's not something they can talk about because on the outside, their life looks really great.
Now, what are some of the barriers for why someone would, not kind of white knuckle it or keep moving forward? I mean, I think a lot of us have this mindset, or at least I do, that, hey, life's tough. Suck it up,
Yeah. And so a lot of those people have done that. Like they've gone through that part, and that's why they're so successful, is they did get through that. They do have a really solid mindset around money, but what about the rest of their life? What about their legacy before they leave this world? Because once you have attained a certain amount of money, it's like, okay, but what's next? I have all this money. I have these, accolades. Now what do I do? How do I feel fulfilled? How do I wake up in the morning and really feel happy with my success?
No, I think a barrier is for a lot of people is, just time, especially if they have a family, to go spend some time with somebody kind of talking these issues out. Or they're not really issues, right? They're just, they're kind of more barriers.
Yeah.
And like, how would you say, like, how does this kind of work into someone's busy schedule?
Oh my gosh. So great question. When we're thinking about abundance, one of the things I learned when I died, well, I usually don't say I died because there is no death. When I left this world, I'll tell you, I never more alive. But when I left this world, I realized there's a lot that happens when you leave this world. But one of the nuggets that I brought back was that we tend to, and specifically money, cage. Right? So abundance is part of a creative energy, and so we, if you're really thinking a little bit higher conscious, you can say, okay, money is created, not when you think of music, think of poetry, that's creative energy. And right now, especially during the pandemic, we're not worried that we're going to run out of music. We're not worried that we're going to run out of poetry or artists, but we're worried that we're going to run out of money. And interesting, money, in my experience in death, is that money is in the same category as abundance and abundant creative energy, right? So whether you're creating music or creating money, it's the same energy, it's the same concept, and we have access to it. And so just the way that it really has to do with your mind and your beliefs around it. And so I would say that most people on the planet have some limiting belief in money, and that they either it's hard to earn, that's a belief, it's not a true one, or money is hard to come by, or enough, and those are actually not true. And when you leave this world, you realize all that, right? And then it's like, oh my gosh, I was believing in lack. And so when I came back, I realized that abundance is literally all around us. And so to answer your question, you really have to be tuned into it. You have to change any mindset. You change your conversation about money from the moment you wake up, the moment you go to bed.
And just to give people a little bit context, you're kind of referring to how you kind of your near-death experience. Mariko doesn't really like to get into it, but for the most part, she had Lyme disease, and kind of had this epiphany, kind of in the low period of that. So was that epiphany kind of came to you at a certain point, or was it, did it take days to sort of come together for you?
Both. So when I came back during my death, I had what I call a download. It felt like I was first of all, my death didn't feel, I'm sure I wasn't, so it happened at home. So I wasn't connected to, machinery at a hospital. But my husband will tell you it wasn't very long, it may have been just a matter of minutes, but on my end, it felt like I was there for 800 years. So for me, it felt like I lived a whole lifetime there. So when I came back, I had gotten kind of what I call a download. I'd gotten a lot of information to bring back, and they told me it wasn't my time. I had to go back and help people. So when I came back, I understood it, but it took me a good decade to unpack it and be able to understand it in a way that I was living it. Plus, I went through a long-term illness. And so I understood it on one level, but how do I live it, right? That took a decade.
Yeah. Would you say it was more you needed to help people, or was it that you needed to make a bigger impact or legacy in the world? Which of the two did it skew towards?
Legacy, definitely. I know that I'm here to impact a lot of people. I know that when I came back, I knew I was here to help millions of people around the world. Now, that said, when you come back and you can't even stand up or go to the bathroom on your own, I had to understand it in a way that I was able to time, which I need to help people, right? Because the big of what I was here to do in that moment, coming back after my breath.
Yeah, and I think most of the people I'll have, I still do free calls for new folks to the Hui Deal Pipeline Club. You guys can sign up for that at SimplePassiveCashflow.com/club. But I'm talking to a lot of people who are, they're kind of getting started on this journey, and they're kind of thinking about themselves first. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. They're just trying to get themselves settled and get them, it's kind of like just getting back to baseline in your circumstance. And I think at a certain point when money is really not an issue, and you're kind of just you're just kind of thinking about what's bigger, what kind of impact you're going to make, what kind of legacy you're going to make.
Mhm.
But it's a phase thing. You can't, I don't think you can just skip right to going to legacy. I think you have to get yourself up the baseline
Mhm.
and put your own oxygen mask on first. But I mean, what's your opinion on that? Helping folks move
I
to
mean,
good
you're
space.
right. Yeah, it takes years to understand what that really is. And, oftentimes people have more than one legacy, right? So if you've been a professional athlete, that's one legacy, but what's after that? And so because we are unlimited, that's the other thing. We're unlimited. So in our in this world, we feel the limitations of this world, but when you leave it, you're like, oh, I was unlimited the entire time and I had no idea. Um, but what I would say as far as how we tend to be raised from children to think, what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? And so I feel like culturally we are planning for middle age. We're planning to, because when they say, what do you want to be when you grow up, they're really thinking, at least in my opinion, what do you want to be when you're 30 or 40, right? And not, who are you when you leave on your last breath? And I have a lot of my clients do this exercise of, on your last breath, who are you? Who were you? Who were you here to serve? And you do that, right? Because when we think of that, when we think of the entire life, then we go back and we go, these are the people that I know that I'm here to help, that I know this is what I'm here to do. And it's easier to go back and do that.
Yeah, so I have a little business and life coach now, and we've kind of come to a point where they've kind of made me see that my big um, motivation is, I'm a big ego guy. I want to create big legacy and big
Mm-hmm.
impact. And I think about this all the time when I'm, we'll bring on a new client into the mastermind. They've got to pay some money to get into that group. And then I take that money and I put it right back into something. I pay a virtual assistant to do something, or I buy some ads, Facebook, a few $1,000s of Facebook ads. I'm like, where did all this money go? Like, I did this to kind of be financially free, but here I am just burning it up again, putting it right back in the business. And then for what, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I've kind of created that short circuit where, well, it's for legacy, it's for impact, it's for doing something bigger. And,
Mm-hmm.
I've got the bases covered today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing that you're doing is you are creating a network of people. So in my world, I call it my tribe, right? So the cost of doing business, the cost of being in your mastermind, the way I see it is that's the cost of being with these greater minds. It's the cost. This is the price of admission to get into a mastermind and be with people that are like-minded, because the conversation that are going on in your mastermind is not what's going on in the rest of the world. And so you need to bring those people together to say, how can we talk about money, about abundance, about wealth, about legacy in a way that's more of an expansive conversation. And so the cost is saying, okay, and the people that aren't willing to pay that cost, that entrance fee, are they'll have a different conversation somewhere else, right? And so I think it's beautiful, because people need to be around people who are abundant in order to become abundant.
Right. And, like, all I know is, like, a few years back, I couldn't stand just talking to regular folks at work about normal financial building stuff. Just,
Right. Right. You grow past them.
yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. I used to do that for
No,
a long time, not to
not at
say
all. But
that.
I think growth is good, and we do grow past relationships. And I think that that's a really difficult thing for people, because they want to hold on to all the relationships. Meanwhile, they also want to grow past it, and they want to go into a next level with abundance, with wealth, and with their legacy. And so it's a matter of, how do I navigate that and keep relationships that are really dear to me, and also allow myself to grow. And that's where, masterminds are really a wonderful place for that to happen.
Right. So you're working with a lot of high-end clients, a lot of people working day jobs. What are some of the findings, the things you work through with those folks, epiphanies
Believe
that
it,
they have?
guilt's a big one. So in leaving, some people, when they know more and leave the whole thing you need to do, a lot of times what stops them up
Oh, could you
is,
could you repeat that? You cut it out.
which part, the whole thing?
Yeah.
Okay. Guilt, I would say, one of the biggest factors, because when somebody says, okay, when we see, okay, this is the bigness, this is what you're meant to do before this world, but that might involve leaving their job in that, right? We don't just quit their job, but they feel sometimes guilty. Well, but my company needs me. What would they do without me, right? And so actually guilt is a big one.
And I usually will tell them, well, that company doesn't care. Next day, if you left, they wouldn't care about you. But that's
Mm-hmm.
just me. But how do you kind of work through that? I mean, people think that they have, if they left tomorrow, the whole world would crumble.
I think what you have to do is you have to step into your next before you get there. Meaning you have to step into the mindset, you have to step into feeling that next level of who you are before you become it. So part of what I do is I help people become the person that they need to be in order to do the thing they're meant to do, right? So that's a big mindset shift. And there's a lot of action around that, but you literally have to feel it before you do it. So you really have to believe in, you have to believe in your dream. If it's not something you're passionate about, then don't do it, because there has to be a drive, right? In order to be willing to quit your job, you have to really love what you're doing, obviously.
So is it kind of like you have to know what kind of legacy you're going to create before you kind of get off of this your current job or your current path? Is that a key part of it?
I think so. You don't have to know the specifics, but you kind of have to be able to feel what it is, right? If you have no what it is, there's no reason to quit your job. But if you are specific about, this is what I'm here to do, and you are in the financial position to quit your job, or be do both, have your job, and then on the side you're working your business, you're growing your business. It doesn't all have to happen once. And so that really just comes down to time management. What are you doing right now? What are you doing next? What's on the possibility list? What could you do, but you don't need to carry that with you. And that's something that also stops people up. You look at all the possibility. Okay, this is what I want to do. And it's this big thing in the world. Great. You can't carry that around with you all day, that idea. There's too many working parts in that idea. So you have to really use time management skills and say, what am I doing right now? What's on my schedule next week? And then you create like this possibility list of like, okay, and these are all the things that I could do, but I'm not doing it right now today. And then you take some of the things that you could do and you're chunking them down to where you're sort of chipping away at them.
Now, one conversation that came up a lot during our last Hawaii Mastermind was, a lot of people are already on the path of investing. They pulled all the retirement funds. They've got things deployed in good cash flowing assets. But they're realizing like, wow, I'm going to need to invest a lot more. And this is not a get rich quick thing. And I'm like, yeah, man. But then then I'm like, yeah, you better get comfortable, buddy. Like it's going to take a while. But they don't have, maybe they just haven't spent the time to kind of figure out what is that bigger thing that they're going to need to create, or maybe they don't want to create. Maybe they're totally happy. They're happy at their current job. And what's kind of the advice for those type of folks?
So you need to know why you're doing what you're doing, right? So I know why I show up. I do. I know why I'm doing this podcast. I don't want anyone to die with an assignment on their life. I don't want anyone to leave this world unfinished, right? We don't get to go time, but I don't want anyone, if I can help it, to leave this world and go, oh my gosh, I didn't finish. I could have done this big thing, but I just got stuck. No. And because that happens. And so I think for people that really know, they really feel like they want to do something bigger, they need to know why is it. You're right. It's not going to be instant. And so your why is going to get you through the hard. Your why is going to be, saying you give up and pushing forward. And if you don't know why, you'll give up. So you really have to have a strong sense of, why am I doing this?
I guess like, one thing I'm kind of saying here is let's just say you make 80 grand a year and you save a whole bunch of it, and you travel the world, and you're good, right? If you're good, you're good.
Mhm.
And also if you're making $500,000 a year, and that's really all you really want to do, and not really take up a side gig or a business or create a huge legacy,
Mhm.
um nothing's wrong with that too either, right?
Well, I think sometimes the legacy is your family, right? The legacy doesn't have to be big. The legacy could be literally being the most amazing parent you've ever been, or friend. So that's the other thing, right? We tend to believe that a legacy has to be this big thing, and sometimes it's very quiet. Sometimes it's something that nobody else notices, right? We have those people in our family that literally were the glue to the entire family, and that's the I think that's beautiful. I think that's a well lived. So it's not just about making money and being abundant. Abundance, all of it, right? Abundance is friendships, family, relationships, all of it.
Right. I think a lot of people listen to these podcasts, and they hear about doing these big things, but that's not for everybody. I mean, we don't want to shame anybody, and just kind of playing the role, kind of making your own world a better place.
Right. That honestly, if you don't have that nailed down, then the big thing in your life is still is not going to fix it. It's not going to fix it, right? You really have to be and continue to become a person that you really are happy with. And so that's some personal development, right? You got to kind of look at yourself and say, am I a good person? Am I a good friend? Am I a good father? Am I a good mother? That does have to come first.
Yeah, I think I see in in the real estate, for example, people with like these thousands of units. They're kind of weird people, in my opinion. They're kind of kooky. I always tell my clients, let's figure out what your end game is.
Yes.
Define your end game and work towards that. And then when you get it, stop. And I use the analogy of like people are on a train or the subway. People always get off before the end of the line. The only
Mhm.
people that don't get off are the weirdos, the homeless people, and the people that don't really they're just weird. They just stay to the end. And that's kind of like the people that keep trying to achieve and do more and more and more, but for what? No
Right.
reason. I mean, it's cool, and sometimes people just like to ride the train, ride the subway, but that only happens in some romantic comedies, I guess, on a first date. But yeah, I
You
mean,
want to make
I see the downside with some of the people that keep going and going and going.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, that's all they have, because they didn't build a life as well.
Right.
And so
Any
that can be
a-
weird.
any last thoughts to kind of part on the listeners here that you think we missed?
Mm. Go for it. I think that's really a big message here, is just go for it. Big. Don't leave anything undone. Decide what playing big means to you, right? So, like we said, playing big could mean scaling down on work and becoming a parent. Playing big mean launching a business and around the entire world. But you decide what big means to you, and don't leave it undone.
Well said. Mariko's website is sopriority.com. You guys want to check her out. And any other ways to get a hold of you? You want to put out there for
Sure.
her?
I'm on Instagram at Mariko Frederick, and Mariko is spelled Mariko. And on Facebook, the Mariko Frederick.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. We try to throw in one of these, more life building type of less hardcore investing, math, science podcasts once in a while. If you haven't done so, please check out the website. I've been doing a lot of upgrades there at SimplePassiveCashflow.com. A lot of ultimate guides like for taxes, trade lines, legal, all sorts of fun stuff. So if we haven't connected, please let's get on the phone. Shoot me an email at Lane@SimplePassiveCashflow.com, and we'll see you guys next time.
This website offers very general information concerning real estate for investment purposes. Every investor situation is unique. Always seek the services of licensed third-party appraisers and inspectors to verify the value and condition of any property you intend to purchase. Use the services of professional title and escrow companies and licensed tax, investment, and or legal advisor before relying on any information contained herein. Information is not guaranteed, as in every investment there is risk. The content found here is just my opinion, and things change, and I reserve the right to change my mind. Above all else, do your own analysis and think for yourself, because in the end, you are the only person who is going to look out for your best interests.